I'm Jeanine McGuire. Just a little bit of my background. I actually started out as a software developer back in the 80s. I know I'm dating myself a little bit. But I really learned a lot during that time because so much of the technology that we use today was being developed. And I got to be a very, very small part of that. One of those things I learned along the way, though, was that coding really wasn't for me. I just didn't enjoy looking at code all day. So I turned into a project manager. I did training. And then I got interested in kind of the numbers side of things. And I did Six Sigma and then Lean and Kanban. So I have a pretty diverse background there. I do now work for Optum as an internal consultant. So, my challenge is usually to go out to find things that are broke and work with people to find a way to fix them. I'm also an AKT, an accredited Kanban trainer, so I help organizations and teams get started on their Kanban journey. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some experience that we've had with Kanban at Optum. I'm going to talk a lot about change management because, as you'll see, Optum and the parent company of United Health Group are a very large organization. So we had to have a concerted programmatic effort to really drive this forward in the company. So we'll talk about that approach. We'll talk about a few case studies from Optum and then a few of our lessons learned as well. So first off, just to give you a little bit of context, Optum is part of the larger United Health Group, which is Fortune 6. We have about 280,000 employees. And you might be more familiar with United Healthcare. People recognize that name a little bit more. A lot of us have United Healthcare insurance, and every employee is also a customer, so I'm very familiar with it too. Now, the company of Optum is really a healthcare intelligence company. So we're that data analytics behind the scenes. We do a lot of different things too. There's pharmacy care services grouped in there. There's performance analytics. A lot of intelligence going on. Now, the IT group that supports United Health Group is also housed within Optum, and some of our case studies will come from them. When we look at United Health Group employees and where they're located, we're pretty much an international organization. As you can see there, each of those dark blue shaded areas are areas where we have offices. Now, the areas where we have employees are even broader because we have a large workforce of telecommuters. About 20 to 30% of our employees are telecommuters. So what this does for us, one is we have a real diversity of talent. And I see it as a real advantage compared to a lot of companies I've worked for because literally you can hire anyone, anywhere. But it also presents a lot of challenges when you're trying to communicate and drive change through the organization. Operationally, there's challenges as well when you have teams that are comprised of people in the office, telecommuters, people in different time zones in different countries. And when they do shift work and they're trying to hand off the work from one shift to another, they need ways to do that in an efficient way and effectively. Another challenge we have is the growth challenge. The healthcare environment is very dynamic right now. It's very changing. And United Health Group is very much in growth mode. So what that means for our employees back in the office is we have an ever-growing number of projects. We have more and more employees that we're supporting, more people that we're working with. And particularly for our IT organization that's supporting all of this, they're often challenged with supporting this growth without growing their staff. They need to do more with less. So one of the things that the IT leadership did was they chartered this program called Optum to help the organization deal with this challenging environment and be as effective as they could be. So let me go ahead and show you a quick video about this.
At Optum Technology, we have a wealth of intellectual capital. We have great technical talent. We strive to be agile, and we focus on delivering the best solutions to our customers. As Steve Hemsley has stated, very good is very good, but we are on a path to being a great company. As the healthcare environment and United Health Group continue to grow and evolve, so do our customers' expectations. As leaders, we need to find new and better ways to engage creatively and responsively with our customers. The APEX program is here to help you navigate this rapidly changing environment. Leaders across our organization are using APEX to inspire employees and drive outstanding results. Techniques like translating the 4 voices into key performance indicators enable our leaders to focus on the right work and achieve peak performance. And visual management tools help ensure we're on target and empower our teams to reach new levels of performance. Ultimately, these efforts result in better organizational alignment with Optum's overall business strategy for the enterprise. By sharpening our focus and achieving enterprise-wide alignment, we can evolve from being a good company to being a great company. Are you up for the challenge? Get started now. Visit goto.optum.com/apex.
Okay, so the APEX program was meant to bring together a lot of things that were happening in the company. First off, we never really start with a blank slate when we undertake an initiative, right? There's always a history. And this was a company well steeped in Six Sigma. Okay? We had started into Lean, we had started into Agile as well. And then we had some grassroots efforts going on, particularly around Kanban. And Dragos actually was one of those who helped us. He was our first trainer and coach that worked with us and really laid the groundwork for this. But what we realized was we had all these best practices, particularly around Kanban, that we wanted to be used more in the company. And we needed a way to do that. So we came up with this integrative approach of fitting everything together in this APEX program and then spreading it across the company to everyone so that they could use it. Because it doesn't do us much good if we have maybe 1, 2, 3 teams using Kanban and nobody knows about the advantages that it has and what it can do for you. As a company, we can be better if we can share that. So the APEX program at its core was 6 web-based training modules. Okay? And those modules needed to be web-based training, obviously for our virtual environment where things needed to be available anytime, anywhere, on demand. And then we added to that SharePoint resources in the form of a repository where we had tools, templates, and then we actually enabled collaboration there as well. There were some forums where people could work with each other virtually. Another thing we did was adoption activities. This was at the time a relatively new feature that was in LearnSource, our learning management system. And what it allowed you to do was after someone completed a training module, let's say the one on Kanban, then you could outline the activities they needed to take in order to implement what they just learned. So for Kanban, the first one might be maybe they'll take our workshop, KMP1. And then the second one might be actually designing their Kanban board. The third one, implementing their cadences and so forth. So they would actually go into LearnSource, they would complete the training module, the web-based training module. These activities would populate, guide them through it. And then we could actually track them. If I were working with them as a coach, I could see how they're progressing. If the leader in their organization had some overall goals around it, they also could see how they were progressing. And then finally, with our expert guidance and support, we had a lot of web-based workshops where we presented on different topics or did Q&A sessions, and we would record those and make those available to everyone as well. So just to give you an idea of how we integrated this content and what's all involved in the program, and you will see a mixture of things here. So first off, in Module 1, we call it Fundamentals. And what we're really doing here is setting the stage for that service-oriented approach of everything is about the customer. The customer comes first. We need to understand their requirements. And, you know, this is in IT. So I could tell you IT isn't always the most customer service-oriented historically, although it's been getting a lot better. So we really put the emphasis there. We also cover in this module NPS, because that's one of the key goals for the company right now is bringing our NPS up, and we relate that back to the work we're doing as well. In the second module, we take and we go into database decision making. So translating what you just learned about the customer requirements into those key performance indicators so that we truly understand how well we're performing against those requirements and we can make course corrections as early as needed. The third module is where we introduce Kanban. And we talk about Kanban as a way to work better, to work more efficiently. We introduce pool systems. We also go over some of the metrics and analytics associated with Kanban, and we talk about how to integrate that with everything else. At a basic level, you might even want to take some of your metrics on your Kanban boards and integrate those to your dashboards. Next up, we talk about where you have gaps in performance. Now, this module heavily goes into Kaizen and what a Kaizen environment looks like and feels like. And then we also do cover, as you see on the screen there, Deming's Plan, Do, Check, Act, and how that all fits together, because that was already in practice too. Again, we're integrating and bridging. Next up, we have Module 5, and this gets in, again, to that service-oriented approach, but what we're talking about here is, okay, so you've learned about all these tools and techniques, but you got to remember that to truly serve the customer, a lot of times we need to break down those silos and break down those barriers between areas and start to work end to end across the value stream for the customer. So that's a lot of what this module focuses on. It also has a maturity model that's integrated with it and a maturity assessment that's done. And that, after you're done with the training, that's one of those activities you do that helps you plan for moving forward. Finally, our last module is on change management and giving leaders, whether formal or informal, the tools that they need to really drive the change through the organization. And we use the ADKAR change management model for that. So these are the 6 modules that we actually rolled out to the organization as web-based training courses, 30 to 45 minutes each. In a lot of organizations, they were actually mandated, which isn't always a good thing. You know, you want your adoption, you want people to take it, but people also aren't as open a lot of times when it's mandated. But it actually turned out very well. The training received rave reviews. We received comments that it was some of the best training people had ever had. There's one comment, it wasn't just training, it was an experience. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of that one, but I think it had to do with the fact that a lot of people went through it as a team and experienced it together and then acted on it. Now, I will tell you, one of the reasons it turned out so well is that we use professional talent for it. We have in-house instructional designers and graphic designers that we were able to use, and we use professional voice talent, and it made a big difference. So I want to show you a little bit about some of the supporting materials and the rest of it after the CBTs, and we'll look specifically at those related to Kanban. So we had a SharePoint, and this is our Hub Connect page, and we had a page for each of those modules. And what we did on those, we provided things like a reading list in order to learn more about the concepts, the fundamental concepts. We also had quick references out there. So, you know, whatever you might need to know to get started here, one of them is, you know, how to get a license for Swift Kanban, one of the tools that we use. Another thing that we had was tools and templates. And these were things that we designed with the training, but there was also sharing that was occurring between organizations. They would submit a tool and would post it out here for everyone as well. And I'll show you what some of those look like. First, here's an example Huddle agenda. Now, one of the first things you'll notice is probably the term Huddle. We don't call it a stand-up session. And that has a lot to do with our virtual environment. Being that we're virtual, we have people working in their home office, in physical offices. Really, they could be anywhere working. And for the most part, they were not standing up. So the stand-up part of it really wasn't as meaningful to us. So we called it a huddle. And this is just an example template, again, to get people started about how you hold a huddle. Another template that we shared out there, and this actually came from one of our teams that had that challenge around time zones. So this was a team that their time zones were so different, they were never able to get people together in at one time for a huddle. So they came up with this virtual huddle process. and we're able to share that out. What they did was, at regular intervals, once a month, once a week, whatever made sense, they would send an email out to the team and they would say, what's the biggest thing standing in the way of achieving our objectives? Or maybe they'd say, you know, we've got a bottleneck that keeps occurring in the development lane. What do we do about that? You know, what's standing in our way there? They would then tabulate all the responses, find the most common answer, send that back out to the team and say, okay, so what solutions would you recommend? The solutions would come back in, they'd tabulate those as well, and then they'd send them out to the team for a vote. Say, here you have 20 virtual dollars. How do you want to spend it? Which solutions do you want to spend it on? And the solution that the team gave the highest dollars to was the one that would invest the time in and implement. So that's one way that they overcame that challenge in time zones and really getting people together. Now, another thing that we have is out on our SharePoint, we have a forum on Kanban. So here, groups can come out, they can collaborate, they can ask questions, post answers, they can have discussions. Actually, before I came to this conference, I went out and posted on this forum and said, hey, I'm going to the conference. What type of information can I bring back for you? And one of the things I heard was they were really interested in business cases, what other organizations are doing. So I'll be sharing that back with the group in some lunch and learns. Now, I mentioned this maturity assessment that we have. So the purpose of the maturity assessment was after the leaders would complete the training, and they did have to complete the training first, then they had this tool that they would actually go through and score their organization as far as where they were maturity-wise on a scale of 1 to 5, so similar to a CMM type of scale. And with that maturity assessment, we had several dimensions that we were looking at. The first was integration across the supply chain. So we're looking at, is it truly a service-oriented process that we have in place? Have we gone so far as to integrate all of our stakeholders into what we're doing? And this would look like cadences that we have in place, and how strong are those cadences? Have we included our vendors in that? Have we included our customers? Are we transparent with our customers? So that's what the first dimension would look at. The next gets into more of a BPM type of element, business process management. We're asking, how well do we know our process? How well do we know our work? Is it documented? Can somebody walk in essentially as a new employee and do it? Next up is the performance management. So do we have the data that we need to truly inform what we're doing? And then work in progress management, which is Kanban. Are we using that to perform at our best as well and truly be as knowledgeable as we can about our work, adaptable and agile to meet those customer needs? Next up is automation, and this was just a matter of where it was possible and practical to use automation to ensure quality and increase efficiency. And then finally, continuous improvement. And continuous improvement we really defined as a combination of innovation and incremental growth. So that would give us a baseline maturity score for that group, and we were able to then take that and do a snapshot of the organization as a whole. And for leadership, that would really inform them of where we had opportunities, where we had strengths, and it actually created a lot of discussion between leaders about where they could learn from one another and leverage best practices. Now, another thing that came out of this were action plans. Obviously, we know when you start to see those gaps, there were action plans that needed to be created as well. And here's some examples of action plans that came out related to Kanban. So on this one, for the first one, we had a group that was working with Kanban boards in 2 different tools. They were working in Rally, which since has become CA Agile, and then they were working in Swift Kanban. And they had the realization going through this process that they were only using WIP limits in one system, in CA Agile, and not in Swift. And they really needed to use WIP limits in both. So that was one of the action items they took out of it. The next team realized that they were having problems on the front end of their process, where there was an expectation that as soon as work came into the queue or the backlog, that it be assigned to somebody. and they were getting overwhelmed with work in progress. So they realized that they needed that replenishment cadence and needed to focus on that. Our final one was a team that was comprised of offshore and onshore resources that needed a better way to manage that work and that handoff at work. They did not have Kanban in place and wanted to put it in place as a result of learning about it. So this has been a really great tool for us from a maturity assessment. And I have to say too, now that we have a maturity model from Kanban as well, I'm really excited to take that and see what we can learn for it and where we can go next with this. Because as a tool, it really works great with leaders. Okay, to tell you a little bit more about Kanban adoption at Optum, I just want to walk you through what it looks like. So basically, we have two tools that are in use for Kanban. The first is CA Agile, and our developers, mainly our software developers who are working in an Agile environment, are using CA Agile and the Kanban board that's associated with that. Now, we also have a large number of people who are not following that Agile work process or working in CA Agile, and they're using Swift. And I can tell you Swift has really been a great tool for us. It especially allows us to follow what we teach in our Lean Kanban training, where we say you want to take your process as it currently exists and stand it up on the Kanban board, and then allow the Kanban system to inform you about where you need to change. And Swift has done that really well for us. We have right now over 1,800 licensed users in that system. Now, I will tell you there is a mandate for some of our teams that they have to use CA Agile. Some of them, especially those that started on Swift first, didn't want to make that transition. And Digite has a product called Swift Sync that allowed us to actually take the data from Swift and port it over to CA Agile so their users didn't have to move over there. The data could, and that meant the mandate for reporting. So to support all of this, we also needed some Kanban training. Now, as I mentioned, we introduced Kanban. It's kind of Kanban 101 in that Module 3 in Apex, that web-based training that's about 30 minutes long. Then we also wanted to go deeper into Kanban, and initially we started out using external trainers like Dragos, who helped us out in the beginning. And then we started training our employees like myself to be Kanban trainers. And we offer KMP1, which we call Kanban Essentials and Design, in-house. Some of our teams also want tool-specific training. So we have employees who deliver CA Agile training when needed. And then Digite has worked with us to provide training on Swift Kanban as needed for our teams. And sometimes it's special topic focused as well, just depending on what they want to do. We've had a few teams who have matured to the point where they're ready for KMP2, and we have offered that as well. Now to walk you through a couple of the case studies. The first one is in technology services, and this was one of our pilot groups for Apex, so one of our early adopters for that. They're responsible for workstation infrastructure, so operating systems, Citrix, VPN, and given that environment that I shared with you, they're a very busy group. So these are actual slides from a challenge or a problem that they had, and the way they presented it, and they presented the solution. So they started out saying, we're missing our SLAs related to cycle time. And as they started to dive into the data, they saw that they had a lot of tickets open. And a lot of those tickets were just sitting there aging with no action on them. 40% of the work had stopped and was just sitting there aging. 25% of it was over a week old in this particular snapshot. And as they looked at the team, the 5 people who had the greatest cycle time on their work had the greatest number of tickets open. Now that doesn't surprise any of us, right? But what they did was they actually recognized from the training that they had that, hey, we know this from our Kanban training. We have a problem with limiting our work in progress. And these are their actual slides, and it always makes you feel good when your training comes back to you. They even presented this where they talked about flow control and what they really wanted their flow to look like. And then they talked about the benefits if they made a change and started limiting their work in progress. Things like greater satisfaction for their employees because they had a greater sense of accomplishment in getting work done. That the staff covering PTO wouldn't be overloaded. Less stress from juggling so many items at once. Reducing overburdening and so forth. So they implemented it. And as a result, they saw their median cycle time decrease by an hour, which is about 18.5%. They saw their lead time decrease by 5.4 hours, or about 16%. And their average effort did increase. But this was good work because this was your value-added time. This was getting the customer engaged in the time they wanted to be engaged and closing that ticket. Now, this particular team is actually not working on one of the Kanban boards with this work. They're actually working in Service Center and working tickets out of there. So the way that they manage their work is they still have huddles on a daily basis. And they have this report that's produced in Tableau. So it's your typical call center type of stuff. It's, what your calls look like as they're coming in, the percentage of calls by skill, the priority, how we're doing on our service level agreements and handling those calls so that they can make adjustments as needed. And one of the things they did was, with this report, they integrated the work in progress or WIP guidelines to it. And those were dynamic. They would change on a day-to-day basis based on what we saw happening with the call volume and the trends that were occurring. So this report would go out to everyone in their email, everyone on the team. They would have it to reference. And then there would also be the daily huddle to review this. Now this team also had a Kanban board in Swift Kanban to manage their other work. So even though they're very much a support type of group working tickets, they also have maintenance that they want to do when they get a chance. They have enhancements that they need to do. And more importantly, they have a lot of great ideas along the way. So what this Kanban board did for them was it gave them a place to manage that other work. And then they used the backlog that you see in the front here to track all their ideas as they occurred. And they talked about the satisfaction that this gave to the team, that when they had a good idea and they couldn't implement it right away, that they had a place to keep it and track it. And they have weekly huddles with this work. And one of the things they do is they celebrate the victories in the weekly huddles. They talk about where they have challenges and how to overcome them. And then they go through as a team and they prioritize what's going to move next onto this board. So our next example is an engineering team that's also using Swift Kanban. And when you look at this board, it looks pretty basic. We have an expedited lane, we have standard work, we see some columns that are pretty typical for IT engineering work. But if you go a little bit behind the scenes, there's some pretty advanced stuff going on here too. And one of the things that they're doing is they've identified the types of work they have into card types. And with those card types, each card has a template. That template, when you open a new card, will automatically populate a to-do list with the standard work associated with that type of card. So if I open up this card, I'm going to see things like complete the VPN form, Navigator request, ServiceNow request, ECC sites folder. All of that's automatically populated each time that type of card is open. So then when I take that work, I pull it in and I start working on it, I'm just going down the list. And I know everybody's following the process. Another thing they're doing is using parent-child relationships. And what this helps to do is to really track the work associated with each client. So there is a parent card for each client, and then each piece of work is tracked on another card but associated with the parent card via that parent-child relationship. So what this allows us to do is the child cards, can be worked by anyone, anywhere. They don't even have to be on the same Kanban board. But through that parent relationship, we can track that work, we can do mass updates to it, and we very much know what's going on for that client at any given time. Okay. Now this particular team, since they implemented Kanban, has seen a reduction in administrative cost of about $330,000 annually. For a team of 6 people, I would say that's pretty significant. And the way that they realized that reduction in cost was they're spending less time per ticket. And I would suggest that has a lot to do with that to-do list template, because you get the work and you're ready to run on it. You know exactly what you need to do. And they have seen an overall cycle time reduction as well. Now my final example is one of our software development teams that's working in CA Agile. I wanted to show you what that looked like. So this group, this is CA Agile, and you can see they're using a typical Agile process for their columns as laid out on their Kanban board. They've also done a really nice job laying out their agreements or SOPs for each of those columns. So that, again, this is a way of standardizing that work and ensuring everybody's on the same page, doing the same thing. They're also using tagging of cards for reporting and analysis. So, there's any number of ways you can use that. You can use it to track common projects. You can also use it if, let's say, you're working some sort of tickets or problem solving in your Kanban board, then you can do a word cloud to help with your analysis of trends. Okay. Now, these features are not unique to CA Agile. You can do them in other Kanban systems such as Swift. I just call them out here because this group's doing a particularly good job of using them. And then our next example from them is the analytics that they're using in their daily huddles. So they're able to track their cycle time, their volume, and any changes to it, and look at how that affects their flow on a daily basis. And that's all informing their huddle, allowing them to make the adjustments that they need to make along the way. So that's 3 examples of how we're using Kanban at Optum. I can tell you there are many more, but I could only bring so many to the session today. So now I just wanted to shift a little bit into the lessons learned that we've had. So first off, I could tell you, one of the great learning points for me is you get what you pay for when you're developing training. Now, today there's a lot of different ways that I've seen training presented, especially when it's something that's web-based type training. A lot of times I'll see just narrated PowerPoints that are done. And those serve a purpose, especially if we need to get a message out to people in that way. But I could tell you we have really seen the value of this training because it was professionally done, because it did have checkpoints and activities to engage people and reinforce the learning. And yes, there is a short test at the end to ensure you paid attention and you really got the material. Another thing that has helped us, and this is a common change management practice, I think if you talk to any change management practitioner, they would reinforce that you need to integrate with existing channels. And we did that. We used the corporate learning management system. We used Hub Connect. We went to where the people were. And to be honest, in the beginning, before we started down this path with this program, we weren't doing this. We were going out to as many groups, team meetings as we could get invited to, and we were out there giving presentations, telling them about Kanban and telling it about how great it was. None of it worked as well as this, where we had this channel, we used the official resources, and we really were able to push it out to everyone. It really lended a credibility to our effort as well to be included in these enterprise tools. Now, the other thing that helped us, as much as we loved our trainers that got us started on this, was that investment in the internal AKTs, because it strengthened our skill set inside the company. And that means that anybody can reach out and can call me, or I can go out to the forum and monitor how things are going. I can prod people along. I can answer their questions. So that strengthened our company's skill set and cash as a whole. Leadership buy-in was something we had from the start too, and I know too often we don't have the luxury of that. but when you can, it really can drive you forward. Now, some of the opportunities we've seen, first off, there really is a need for coaching post-training. And with our model in our organization, we're having a little trouble getting engaged. We have teams that come to us for training, and then they're done. They run off and they do their thing. So we're looking at how to keep them more in the loop and do a little more coaching. Because otherwise we see them get stuck a lot of times in that proto-Kanban phase. So they might have the Kanban board as a visual management system, but maybe they don't truly have a pull system, or they aren't reaping the full benefit of the Kanban system, and then they can easily get frustrated and sometimes even abandon it. So that coaching is something we're working to integrate. The other thing that has really helped us is the internal sharing of case studies. We're learning from what we do as an organization and growing. We're still battling, though, a misperception that Kanban is an IT-only tool. And I think this really exists because it started in IT in our organization. The other thing probably is because we are using those Kanban systems as opposed to anything on a wall, because we are so virtual, that maybe people do think of it as more systems type of approach. So we're working with that. I'll be taking back some case studies. And I've recently moved over to the business side of the house and am working to implement it there. So I think that'll help as well. Finally, we've realized that some of the tools, such as Swift Sync, some of the plug-in modules like release management, and even program management as topics, are things that require a little more attention. So we've started doing lunch and learns, really to spread the knowledge on those. So tackling the biggest challenges together is one of Optum's taglines, but it really has been true for what Kanban has done for us. Kanban has helped us to work better together, to bridge a lot of the challenges that we have geographically, and to meet a lot of the challenges that we have around growth, and to perform better as an organization. So with that, what questions do you have? Thank you.